The blade trembled in her hand as she realized the truth that would shatter everything she believed. Welcome, wolf bloods and dream walkers. You are about to witness a tale woven with fire, blood, and forbidden fate. A story where love battles loyalty and destiny carves its path in scars. If you're drawn to stories that burn slow and deep, where every heartbeat holds a secret and every whisper could ignite a war, then this is your world now. So before we dive in, subscribe, like, and ring the bell. Because once you enter this story, there's no turning back. The cold bite of iron cuffs cut into Lyra's wrists as she was dragged through the snow-drenched clearing, her knees scraping the frozen earth. Around her, the Shadowfang pack stood in silence, watching their alpha with reverence and unease. Kyle's eyes, sharp as obsidian and just as unreadable, bore into hers. "Kneel," he said, and though every muscle in her body screamed rebellion, her wolf obeyed. The ritual was ancient, older than either pack's history. A mating bond invoked not by love, but by decree. Magic spilled into the air like smoke, thick with copper and old blood. Lyra snarled as the binding sigil seared into her shoulder, the scent of burning flesh mingling with pine and winter ash. Her breath came ragged, not from pain, but from betrayal, of her body, of her past, of everything she'd vowed to protect. Cale didn't look triumphant. If anything, he looked haunted. "This was not my choice," he muttered, just loud enough for her ears. But the bond didn't care for consent. It had been cast, and Lyra felt it, like a chain around her soul, tightening with every heartbeat. The howl of the wind through the mountains sounded like a scream no one could silence. As the ceremony ended, she looked up, eyes filled with rage and something more dangerous: curiosity. Why hadn't he rejected her outright? Why had the bond accepted them so fast, so violently? One answer burned beneath it all. Because some things are older than hate, older than war itself. She awoke to the scent of smoke and stone. The bed was furs, but the room around her was carved into the mountain itself. Walls smooth as obsidian, lit by cold blue fire and sconces that hummed with restrained magic. Every inch of the Shadowfang fortress whispered dominance, control, and isolation. Lyra rose, her limbs stiff, her instincts on edge. The air tasted of metal and something older, like ancient blood sealed behind walls. 2 guards stood at her door but didn't speak. Instead, they bowed. To her. A flicker of unease coiled in her gut. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was Cale's mate now. And that meant something in this place. Something dangerous. Outside, the Shadowfang courtyard bristled with warriors training in brutal silence, watched by a looming statue of the first alpha, his face forever twisted in a snarl. But Lyra's eyes locked instead on the pulse beneath her skin, the tether that pulled toward Cale. Even apart, she felt his presence like heat at her back. From the highest tower, Cale observed her. His second in command, Thorn, stood beside him. "She'll gut you in your sleep," Thorn said. Cale's reply was flat. "Then I'll die with her scent in my lungs." 3 floors below, Lyra stared up, already planning her escape. But in the center of the fortress, her wolf stilled, as if something ancient slumbered beneath her feet and had just begun to stir. 3 years ago, when the screams first echoed through her childhood home, Lyra had promised herself she'd never submit to Shadowfang blood. Yet now, bound by fate and ritual, her body betrayed her with every breath Cale took near. His scent, ash, pine, and storm, pulled at her instincts, even as her mind clawed to escape. Cale found her in the eastern wing, sparring with a soldier twice her size. She floored him with brutal grace, then turned to Cale with fire in her eyes. "I'm not yours," she growled. "You're not mine," he agreed. "We're fates. I hate it as much as you do." A pause, then quieter, almost reverent. "But I don't regret it." In the silence that followed, something shifted, not in their words, but in the unspoken. Lyra's wolf tilted its head, not trust, but curiosity, and with curiosity, came cracks in the armor. In Kyle's chambers, she found a blade etched with moonclaw runes. Her family's script. Why would he keep that? That night, she dreamed of fire, and a charm once given to her as a child. A boy's voice whispered in the dark, "You'll remember me when the stars fall." When she woke, the mark on her shoulder glowed faintly. The snow had begun to fall again, thick and silent as secrets. In the courtyard, Lyra trained alone, blades slicing air in perfect arcs. But Cale watched, not with lust, nor dominance, with something quieter, something wounded. "She fights like the old blood," he murmured. Thorn sneered beside him. "Old blood doesn't mean loyal blood." Later, by the hearth, Cale offered her wine. She took it with suspicion. "Did you know?" she asked. "That we met before?" He nodded slowly. "You gave me your name before I knew what names meant. I gave you a charm, and I kept it," he whispered. "Even when your people killed my brother." The fire cracked. A memory flickered. A young boy in Moonclaw lands, hiding from battle cries. A girl offering protection. She had forgotten. He never had. Suddenly, the hatred between them no longer felt clean. It was layered, grimy with guilt and half-truths. In the silence between them, something bloomed. Not affection, but recognition. Two enemies who had once been something else. Something stolen from them. Deep beneath the fortress, shadows moved. In secret chambers lit by black flame, Thorn knelt before a mirror that shimmered with forbidden magic. Across it, a Moonclaw general appeared. "The bond has taken root," the general said. "She will be your knife. You need only twist." Thorn smirked. "And Cale?" "Dead. Soon." Upstairs, Lyra heard whispers in the walls. She followed the scent, iron, betrayal, fire, to a vent shaft that led to the war chamber. Maps, movements, Moonclaw plans. She recognized them all. How did the enemy get this intel? Unless someone here gave it to them. Back in her room, she found a note tucked beneath her pillow. 3 words. "Trust no one." It smelled of lavender and home. Her eyes widened. Only one person she knew wore that scent. Her childhood friend. Her secret. Her spy. The full moon rose like a silver blade over the fortress, casting long shadows across the ceremonial ring. Warriors gathered in silence, encircling the stone floor slicked with oil and old blood. Lyra stood at its center, chest heaving, sweat glistening on her brow. Across from her, Cale removed his tunic, revealing the scars crisscrossing his chest like a map of wars long lost. Tonight wasn't about war or peace. It was the dance of dominance, a ritual older than the bond itself, meant to test not only strength, but will. Drums thundered. The circle pulsed with heat and breath and ancient tension. Their movements were calculated yet primal, each strike meant to provoke, each dodge meant to tease. Lyra's blade hissed as it grazed Cale's cheek, drawing blood. The scent ignited something in her wolf, a need, sharp and sudden. But instead of finishing the strike, she spun away, dancing along the line between battle and temptation. Cale growled low in his throat, not from pain, but from admiration. Around them, the pack chanted low, hypnotic. The ground itself seemed to breathe with them, the air thick with cedar smoke and sweat. Lyra ducked under Cale's strike and pressed her dagger to his ribs. "Submit," she whispered against his chest, her voice ragged. He smiled without humor. "Never." With a twist, he disarmed her, pulling her flush against him. For a heartbeat, they weren't enemies. They weren't even alphas. They were just man and woman, wolves bound in fire. Cale's hand lingered at her throat, not choking, not threatening, but feeling the wild pulse beneath her skin. "Why does your heart race for me?" he asked, his breath hot against her ear. Lyra's answer was silence. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from fury at herself, at the bond, at this truth she couldn't ignore. The taste of battle and desire clung to her tongue like wine laced with poison. As the dance ended, the pack erupted in howls. Kyle stepped back first, eyes blazing. "You're not weak," he murmured. "That's why I fear you." Lyra didn't reply. Her hand drifted to the mark on her shoulder, now glowing faintly. More gold than red. Something was changing. Something was waking. That night, sleep came like a thief, stealing comfort and leaving visions behind. Lyra wandered the corridors of her own mind, through memories sealed tight by time and trauma. 3 years ago, she remembered the summit where Shadowfang and Moonclaw had once brokered a fragile truce. She had wandered off alone and found a boy with blood on his hands and fear in his eyes. His name had been Kale, though he hadn't said it then. She had offered him a charm, a crescent moon carved from bone. Waking with a start, Lyra felt her throat close. In her palm, cold and real, the charm. The same one she thought long lost. Kale must have placed it there while she slept. The gesture wasn't dominance. It was remembrance. A relic of a moment before the war had claimed their innocence. That realization rattled her more than any blade ever could. What else had been hidden from her? What other memories were not her own? She found him in the observatory, staring out at the mountains veiled in fog. "You kept it," she said. Kyle didn't look at her. "You gave it to me when I was bleeding and terrified. It reminded me the enemy could show mercy." Lyra felt her chest tighten. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want your forgiveness," he said. "I wanted you to kill me, or save me, and I didn't care which." The silence between them was more intimate than any touch. It throbbed with things they were too afraid to name. Their conversation turned to their childhoods, to stories of mothers with teeth like legends and fathers who taught them to fear. Through long dialogue, rich in memory and longing, they each painted a picture of the people they had once been, and what they might have become. The tension between them frayed, not from lack of conflict, but because something more complicated bloomed there. Understanding. The mark on Lyra's shoulder flared again. This time, not with pain or power, but grief. She stepped forward, touched his chest where the scars crossed. "What did we lose to this war?" Kyle's voice was almost a breath. "Everything." And still, neither of them stepped back. The moment she tried to flee the fortress, agony bloomed in her chest, like fire blooming from bone. Her knees buckled in the snow, the air shredded from her lungs. A pain not from the body, but from the soul. Lyra screamed, and somewhere far behind, Kyle did too. Their bond, forged in ritual, was far more than spiritual. It was physical, living, and symbiotic. Carried back inside by soldiers, Lyra writhed on the floor of the hall, eyes wild, breath ragged. Kale burst in, already limping, blood trickling from his nose. "You tried to break the tether," he gasped. "You almost killed us both." She spat at his feet. "I never asked for this." He knelt beside her, not with rage, but sorrow. "Neither did I. But now we carry it, like a wound that won't heal." That night, the oracle arrived, hooded, blindfolded, smelling of myrrh and death. "The bond cannot be broken," she rasped, "not without blood, and even then, fate may claim another price." Lyra questioned her, rage boiling beneath grief. "What price?" The oracle tilted her head. "One of you will die, or both, or neither. The bond chooses." The room fell silent, thick with the smell of old incense and prophecy. Alone later, Lyra collapsed before the hearth, the fire's warmth unable to thaw the dread coiling in her spine. Her wolf, once fierce, now whimpered within. The bond was no longer a cage. It was a mirror, showing her things about herself she didn't want to see. Fear, need, hope. She hated Kale, yes, but she also feared what she'd become without him. Or worse, what she already was with him. In a rare moment of rawness, Kale joined her by the fire. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The bond pulsed softly between them, not like a chain, but like a heartbeat. Something ancient stirred in both of them, and it was no longer purely enemy. Under the blood moon, the oracle summoned them again, this time to the well of stone, where only alpha bloods could enter. The descent was long. Cavernous tunnels breathing cold into their skin, the air tasting of salt and crushed time. Symbols carved into the walls shimmered faintly, whispering names neither Lyra nor Cale recognized. At the bottom, the oracle waited with arms outstretched. "The bond is not punishment," she intoned. "It is prophecy." Lyra scoffed. "A prophecy I never asked for." "And yet, here you are," the oracle replied. "Two wolves, one fire. If you burn together, you may survive. If you resist, you'll destroy each other. And everything else." Her voice echoed unnaturally, as if time itself bent around her words. She placed her hand over the rune from the charm and closed her eyes. This belonged to the first Alpha's lost mate, a bloodline nearly wiped from history. Until now. The implications hit like thunder. Lyra and Cale were not just bonded by fate. They were reincarnations of a forgotten pairing, a loop the world kept trying to close. Their choices now weren't just personal. They were cosmic. Kyle paced, anger bubbling. "So we're cursed?" "No," the oracle said. "You're chosen. But even the chosen bleed." As they left the chamber, Lyra's legs trembled. Her head pounded with images not her own. Flashes of war, love, death, and rebirth. Her fingers brushed Cale's. He didn't pull away. For the first time, the silence between them felt like unity, not distance. Still, questions gnawed at her. If their love destroyed the world once, what would it do now? Outside, thunder rolled. The moon turned crimson. The oracle's final words echoed in Lyra's mind. "When the twin flames merge, the sky will bleed. Choose wisely when it does." The storm came in silence, riding the back of twilight. Lyra stood at the edge of the fortress wall, wind battering her cloak, the scent of frost and distant blood clinging to the air. In the valley below, shadows moved. Moonclaw banners. Her people. Her brother. Her blood. But they weren't here to rescue her. They were here to destroy everything. Her past collided with her present, like wolves locked in death throes. Inside her, the bond with Cale pulsed with conflict. Later, she sat in the war chamber, the firelight flickering across maps and guilt. Cale's eyes were tired, distant. "You knew this day would come," he said. "You knew they'd come for you." "I didn't think they'd come for this," she whispered. He looked at her then, truly looked. "You're not just Moonclaw anymore, Lyra. You're mine." Her heart thundered, equal parts fury and desire, and shame. Thorn approached that night, the shadows thick around him. He held out a scroll, an offer from the Moonclaw general. "Break the bond," he said. "Betray Cale during the siege, and they'll welcome you home. Free. Freedom." That word sang in her bones like a lie dressed in gold. She took the scroll, read every word, memorized the terms, then burned it in the hearth. "I make my own fate," she said to the flames. Still, doubt clung to her like fog. Her brother believed her a prisoner, and he would not stop until the fortress was ash. Cale, for all his power, was cracking under the weight of prophecy and politics. She was the fracture line between two empires. And worse, between two versions of herself. The warrior, the mate, the wolf, the woman. That night, she went to Cale's chambers. No seduction, no games, just truth. "If I stay," she said, "I do it by choice." He nodded. "And if you go?" "I die," she replied. "One way or another." The mountains echoed with the howl of war. Siege horns roared through the mist. Arrows blackened the sky. The Shadowfang gates shuddered under the first impact, ancient wood groaning like a wounded beast. Lyra stood atop the battlements, armor gleaming, eyes locked on the banner of her birth. Her brother stood at the front, face painted, blade raised. She hadn't seen him in years, and now he came not as kin, but executioner. Kyle rallied his warriors below, barking orders, sword in hand. His voice was iron, his posture unshakable. But when he glanced up and saw Lyra on the wall, Moonclaw born, now wearing Shadowfang armor, a flicker of sorrow cracked his facade. He nodded once. She nodded back. In that moment, no words were needed. They would fight. Together. Or die. Inside, the oracle prepared wards around the keep's heart. The ancient bond's magic pulsed stronger than ever, especially near the hidden rune chamber. Something was building beneath the stone. Something tied to Lyra's bloodline. Her wolf ached with instinct, pacing within her ribs. The magic wasn't just reacting to the war. It was waiting. Back on the field, the first clash erupted like thunder. Steel met steel. Wolves shifted mid-leap, teeth flashing. The snow turned red. Lyra fought at Kale's side, blades a blur, her senses overloaded. The copper taste of blood, the smell of wet fur, the sting of magic burning in the air. And through it all, her brother's voice rose above the chaos. "Traitor!" She turned just in time to meet him. His blade met hers, sparks flying. "You don't belong here," he shouted. "You're one of us." "No," she said. "I was, but I'm something more now." And with that, the bond flared, Kale collapsing in pain yards away. Thorn, dagger in hand, had struck him from behind. Lyra dragged Kale's limp body through the chaos, her arms screaming, tears streaking her blood-smeared face. The fortress quaked beneath her boots. The bond flickered, unstable, dying. And still her mind churned. Thorn. The betrayal. The perfect timing. He had known. He had waited. And he had struck when it would hurt most. Kale's pulse was faint, his lips tinged blue. She had no more time. Inside the main hall, the oracle stood over the rune chamber, chanting. "Bring him," she cried. "The bond must be renewed before the core consumes us." But Lyra froze, because standing beside the oracle was her childhood friend, the spy, not chained, not captive, trusted. "You lied to me," Lyra snarled. "You played both sides." "I did it to save you," the friend said, tears brimming. "I came to stop Thorn, but I failed." Kale stirred, groaning. His hand found Lyra's. "Let me go," he whispered. "Let me die. It ends the war." But Lyra shook her head, fury igniting her voice. "You don't get to choose the ending without me." She stepped into the circle, the rune glowing beneath her feet, the charm pulsing on her chest. The friend began to chant, joining the oracle. Old words, forgotten ones. The binding would be reforged. Not forced this time. Chosen. Magic slammed into the room like a tidal wave, stone cracking, banners catching fire. As the bond reawakened, Lyra saw flashes of the past, present, and what could be. A child with Kale's eyes, a field without blood, a future worth bleeding for. She screamed as the energy tore through her, anchoring her to Kale. Not through pain, through love, through choice. When it ended, Kale gasped to life, coughing. The friend collapsed, her life drained in the ritual, a sacrifice willingly given. Lyra wept beside her, whispering, "Thank you. I see now." The war didn't wait for them to heal. With Thorn assuming command, the Shadowfang warriors turned on their own, manipulated into believing Kale had fallen, and the bond was corruption. The fortress splintered into civil war. Pack against pack. Blood brothers now enemies. Lyra, newly reforged in power, stepped onto the battlefield like a storm-given form. Her body shimmered with radiant energy, eyes glowing silver, her wolf form more than flesh. It was spectral, divine. The blood of the first mate pulsed in her veins, the rune etched permanently into her skin. With a howl that shattered the clouds, she charged into the fray. Arrows melted mid-air, steel shattered against her hide. She had become myth, and they all knew it. Kyle rose behind her, slower, limping, but strong. The bond fed him. He wielded not just a blade, but the legacy of what they were. They fought in tandem, slaying Thorn's loyalists, breaking illusions with truth. "This is our land," Kale shouted. "We are not divided, we are reborn." One by one, warriors laid down arms, swearing to the united bloodline. But Thorn would not yield. On the ridge, he invoked forbidden magic, dark tendrils rising from the earth. He screamed heresy, accusing Lyra of sorcery, of traitorous blood. "She is the end," he howled, No, Lyra replied, stepping forward, voice low, voice final. I am the beginning. She struck him down beneath the full moon, fangs in his throat, claws through his heart. And as he died, the earth quieted. The magic faded. And for the first time in decades, the wolves howled not for blood, but for peace. The morning after war smells like iron, ash, and rain. Lyra walked the halls barefoot, her armor discarded, her soul raw. The mark on her shoulder no longer burned. It pulsed. Steady. Alive. She found Kyle at the balcony, watching the valley where so many had died. He turned, face streaked with ash, eyes filled with something new. Hope. Their conversation was quiet, intimate, filled with broken pieces finally fitting together. I hated you, she said. I hated myself, he replied. You showed me how to stop. They laughed. It was rough, but real. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Down in the great hall, peace talks had begun. Moonclaw emissaries arrived, her brother among them. Their reunion was cautious, raw, but honest. You're different, he said. So are you, she replied. Maybe that's the point. That night, a ceremony was held. Not of war, but unity. Lyra and Kale stood together as equals. Not alpha and mate. Not Moonclaw and Shadowfang. Just wolves who chose each other in the fire. And the rune, etched now into the center of the hall, glowed softly, waiting for the next tale to rise. The world didn't change overnight. Scars remained, graves were dug. But something shifted in the land. The storms came softer, the howls more harmonious. And Lyra, once prisoner, once blade, now wandered freely between the mountains. She wasn't just part of the story. She had become its heart. Kale often joined her in silence. They didn't need to fill the space with words. Their bond was quieter now. Not urgent, not raw, but steady, like a pulse, like a vow, like something that could last. She traced the charm around her neck, the crack still there, the rune dim but warm. It wasn't just a symbol. It was a promise. At night, she wrote her memories in a journal made of wolf hide and bone. She told the truth, raw, unfiltered, painful, so the next wolves might know that peace isn't born in surrender. It's forged in choice, and that love isn't weakness. It's defiance. The final page she wrote contained only one sentence. I was mated to the enemy Alpha, and I would choose him again. The fire crackled, the snow fell, and far in the distance, the wind whispered of a new story.